Thank you for tuning into the Weights and Plates podcast. I am Robert Santana, your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Yo, yo, yo.
What is happening, man?
Oh, man. There's a lot going on. Always things happening in the Jones world. Man, I've had like the car situation. Like your deaf situation.
Oh, yeah?
I've had one of those, but with a car that I'm just trying to sell. I have this Honda Fit that I've been trying to sell for like 3 months, but there's just been like this one particular issue with it that it turned out to be really simple, but it took like 3 different shops to find it and fix it. So I'm at the end of that rainbow, and now after spending like $1,100 fixing what was actually a fairly simple problem, now I get to sell it. So I don't even want to keep the car. I just want to get rid of the damn thing.
Fun times, man. Well, if you were local, I might consider taking it off your hands.
Yeah, if you live in the Chattanooga area or East Tennessee in general, I have a 2015 Honda Fit with 145,000 miles, and it's ready to go another 145,000 miles. So hit me up. Let me know.
Hit them up, people.
But that's not what we're going to talk about today, though.
No.
We're going to talk about something more weighty and
literally.
Yeah.
Well,
that was a dad joke.
Well, I'm, almost 40. So
you get them by default. Once you hit 40, you just start telling dad jokes.
Can you do that even if you're not a dad?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Well, we'll see. So, I'm at my gym right now, and it dawned upon me that we need to talk about reasons why you would train at a gym versus online with a coach, or by yourself, uncoached, which a lot of our listeners do as well. So, yeah, let's get on with that, huh?
Yes. I don't think we've talked about this specifically in the show. I could be wrong. We've got a lot of episodes out there now, but, one of the things that you learn when you do a lot of online coaching is that there are people for whom online coaching just does not work. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But, there are aspects of online coaching that are difficult for some people. And I think it's important to know, because we talk a lot about expectations on this show, and learning how to manage them, and also learning how to manage your resources that you have. Like, so if you want to get the most out of your training, you got to manage the resources that you have. And that's, time is one of them. Recovery is one of them. But there's also, sort of soft resources, if you will. And some of that, and one of those is your ability to self-coach. And one thing, that I have some recent experiences with this, but one thing that I've learned over the years of coaching a lot of people online is that, ultimately online coaching requires a lot of self-coaching. And if you either don't have the desire or ability to do that, or you just struggle to do it, then it's probably not for you. And you need to go find an in-person gym. So I guess what I'm really saying here is that I'm championing the in-person gym experience.
I've had a lot of time to think about this because I've kind of done it all. When I first started lifting, I went to commercial gyms or fitness centers. I went to
what does Rip call them? Health spas.
Health spas. Yeah, I think I went to my first gym membership outside of the high school gym. The high school gym was an old dungeon that later they remodeled, but I like the original dungeon better. Anyhow.
Oh, yeah.
The very first gym I actually stepped into was in 1994 in Illinois, the Leaning Tower YMCA. It literally had a replica of the Leaning Tower of Pizza in front of it. It was on Skokie Avenue in Niles. It was pretty cool. You cannot go into the Leaning Tower, though, but it was there, and it was full-size,
That's amazing.
And my dad lived there because he liked having the maid service. And he thought it was better than an apartment as a single man. So I got to experience that, like what life in a Y was like. Anyhow, I found out recently from a guy who bought a consult from me that apparently Ed Cohn passed through there a few times, and it was like a destination spot for competitors, both in powerlifting and bodybuilding. And
interesting.
It doesn't surprise me because it was like a legit 80s/90s dungeon, like concrete walls, all the white equipment,
Right.
Freaking,
There's like the only decoration is like the one blue stripe across the whole.
I don't even know if it had a stripe, dude. I think it was just bare white concrete from what I can remember.
Yeah.
And my dad took me in there, and I think I had to be 12 to lift, so I just would watch him, And then I couldn't wait till I was 12 so I could do something, and I couldn't perform a dip, so he just like, well, just hold yourself up in the lockout position while I go do these, these dumbbell flies. So I did some isometric dip lockouts. That was probably my first weight room exercise that I can remember. And I was 10. Fast forward, I think by the time I was old enough to go in there, he'd been getting ready to move out. But later on in high school, I finally was able to lift with the swim team. And, I did that, and, that we'll save that for another episode. But when I got into college the first year, I didn't go to the university. I went to the community college, so I lived at my mom's house. I worked at a local gas station, and, it was an actual local gas station where, the owners would come in there. It wasn't, some faceless entity owned by some organization in another country, It was, locally owned.
Right.
And I remember I needed a gym membership. My mom worked out at this health and fitness center in Orland Park, Illinois. It was called Payless Health and Fitness Center. I think it's still there. And it was affiliated with the hospital, so there was this perception that it was much more legitimate than, Bally's or Lifetime or the Globo gyms, the big box Globo gyms. But it was the same shit, I think they...
of course.
I don't know that they even required degrees out of their trainers. They may have wanted certs that were perceived as better than others. I don't know. But I know they had... they had a pool, a spa, all that shit, right? And then carpet, so it wasn't like there was carpet in the machine area, and there was rubber in the free weight area.
Yeah.
And they had lots of cardio. There was an upstairs track. I think that's what I liked about it. There was a quarter-mile track around it. So that I liked because at the time I liked to jog. So that was my first. And then I tried all the various ones. I tried Bally's, then later I tried LA Fitness. I tried Lifetime. It was all the same shit. And I trained alone for many years. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I go to these Globo gyms, and it was kind of a very isolated environment. Nobody talked to each other. Most people were looking at themselves in the mirror with headphones on. And you just went in there, you took care of your business, and you got out. And I think that's kind of still how it is, unless you're, hiring a trainer. These people, pretty much hire somebody to be their buddy because it's really all those fucking guys are good for. But again, another episode. And it wasn't until I was 24, getting my master's, there was a guy that would probably fit into whatever category we fit into. He was a professor at the university. And he was one of those guys they would consider a third-class citizen in the world of academia because he had a master's. Oh, my God. But he was the coolest, most knowledgeable motherfucker of the bunch. And I think he has his ED now, EDD. But he was, his gym reminded me a lot of Rip's. It wasn't his. Him and a couple retired professors got a bunch of donated equipment and set up a little dungeon-style gym underneath the Salvation Army in town, and all they had to do was keep track of people who signed in order to keep it running. And, it was like Rip's old pictures of meets and competitors and lots of history there. And they did strongman, they did powerlifting, they did Olympic weightlifting. He did all of them, and they were, big compounds. You don't need to do curls. That's the first time I heard all that shit. I learned how to hold a bar, low bar, and he taught me how to do that the exact same way Rip did. So fast forward, 5 years later, I met Rip, and that part was already figured out,
Yeah.
Which is, it's pretty cool that I got that experience at that point. But it was the first time I went to a gym and, everybody was cool and you're just talking to everybody, because now it was no longer about getting a quick pump and going to work. Now people were there with a purpose. They wanted a bigger clean and jerk, a bigger snatch, a bigger squat, deadlift, bench press, or whatever it was, or they were competing for a strongman meet. And, I wanted that again, I wanted that again. In LA, I was at the Globo gyms at first. Then I found one powerlifting gym in the city of Los Angeles. It was in El Segundo. It's still there. It's called 4-Star Gym. And, my buddy Jason coaches there, Game Time Strength. And, he was competing in the geared era where they wore equipment, geared meaning equipment, suits and whatnot. And he's probably 5 to 10 years older than me, and he was friends with Horn as well. And he was running his personal training out of there, but the guys before him were from the 80s era, so he had a lot of old school guys that were in their 50s, 60s. This was about 10 years ago. And just a lot of, meet photos and stuff, old equipment, mixed up weights, and it was a cool environment. Everybody was nice. You talk to people, but there was like a divide, right, with Jason and the younger people and then like the older guys that had been there for a long time. So you kind of see this at all serious lifting gyms to some extent. It was kind of funny watching that, but everybody got along at the end of the day. And, I was there for a while. Then I went to another powerlifting gym in town that opened up later because it was a little bit closer. It was called Barbell Brigade, much bigger. And that was like the new school YouTube powerlifting gym that got old very fast for me,
Yeah, sure.
So, then I moved here, went to Revolution Training Systems. People probably saw my videos there if you've been following me long enough. And still cool with those guys, Mike and Matt Peltz, nice guys, strong motherfuckers, gifted athletes, and I trained there for a while until I finally opened up my gym. So, I bring all these places up. One, if you're close to any of them, go check them out. I can't think of a gym owner I didn't like when it came to these smaller gyms. We've all annoyed each other at certain points. We all, have, we all lift heavy.
We're an eccentric bunch.
We lift heavy shit. We're higher testosterone than the average untrained male, and we're gonna piss each other off at times. But I can't think of a gym owner that I legitimately cannot stand. And I like all of them. So if you're in those areas, if you're in town, you're closer to Mike, go to his gym. If you're closer to me, go to my gym. That's more awareness to this service, product, and sport. The more we all do well. It's not a zero-sum game.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, we've got to protect these little paradises, these little oases of training in the desert of fitness.
Mm-hmm. And I like bodybuilding gyms too. Actual bodybuilding gyms, not global.
Oh,
gyms.
those places are awesome. Yeah.
I wouldn't train at one because I'm not into that, but I would go there to do a session. To go and bang arms.
They
or something.
typically have great equipment. It's usually beat to hell, but they'll have like interesting stuff. Like if you need to go do like what are those calf raises you like to do?
Donkey calf raises. Yeah, I get that.
Right. If you need to put 800 pounds in that, you can probably find something like that at a bodybuilding gym.
I went to one here in town called Thorbeck's. It's still there on Curry Road and near Tempe, and he was cool. $3 to get in. I don't know what he charges now, but his website's still the same that it was 10 years ago. And I drive past there periodically to see if he's still there. He's still there. And he had all these pictures of Arnold up. I think he had one squat rack that was even narrower than Rip's. Like it was this narrow squat rack, and it was like not very level. And they were all about machines and dumbbells, and benches. Yeah. But everything was so crammed, and it was like a time capsule back to the early '80s. But again, it's like it's owned by a person, and people know each other and people socialize and they're all kind of doing the same thing. Globo Gym is like, get in, get out. That's the mentality, And
right.
You go to like a Lifetime, most people are in there to get in and get out or work with their trainer and socialize with him. People aren't there to socialize with each other. Like members don't socialize with members unless they kind of already know each other, with few exceptions,
And nowadays everybody's got, earbuds in too. So they're not listening to the whatever bullshit top 40 that they're piping in.
And it's funny you mention that. See, I never liked headphones. I don't like shit in my ears. I remember in college, I started at the university in 2003, so that was the iPod era. And all these people walking around with shit in their ears all day, during the iPod era. And I got an iPod and never used it. Then I got an iPod Touch right before I moved here. I never used it. I cannot have headphones on for music. I can't fucking do it. But when I went to that Salvation Army gym back in 2008 to 2010 over in Macomb, Illinois, there were signs with rules, and one of the rules was no headphones. And the first time I saw that, and I'm like, well, that's not a problem for me, but I get it. And I kind of saw that same kind of culture across these, performance strength / weightlifting / powerlifting type gyms, I don't know about the bodybuilders, but you go to their gyms, they're talking to each other too, because, when it's privately owned like that by a person, because technically, corporations are technically private too, but...
owner-operator kind of situation.
Owner-operator situation fosters community and people talk to each other, and that's what made CrossFit so popular. See, I never got into that. Was not drawn to that. Still not drawn to that. Have no interest, but I could see why it worked so well.
Yeah.
And having worked with so many general population clients, I can see how it really feeds that exercise ADHD that a lot of people have.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have that. I don't have that. I'm a specificity guy. So like if you look at what I've talked about is each one of these gyms, they're specifically focused on something. I went to a weightlifting gym once. I forgot to mention that, Takano's in Woodland Hills in LA County. Really good. And he just started sending newsletters out again too. So if you're in the San Fernando Valley, go check him out if you're into weightlifting. But I went to a weightlifting gym and half of it, shared with a CrossFit, different vibe there, but everybody's talking to each other. It's what Rip said. They're kind of a little more elitist than some of the other gyms, but they're talking to each other. They're all doing the same thing. Bodybuilders are all doing the same thing. Powerlifters are all doing the same thing. In CrossFit, it's really about stimulating your brain so you keep showing up, And right. I just don't have that problem. I want to do one thing, focus on it, and keep going. And that's why I kind of do better at these other gyms where it's like tailored to one focus. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've only been to a handful of CrossFit boxes. But all of them were set up to you have to go with the group.
Yeah.
Like they were set up so you do whatever the group's doing, and it's different all the time, So it's kind of like if you wanted to go over in the corner and like do your thing, there's usually not a great way to do that. So yeah, that it's definitely. But I think it's a feature, not a bug for them. That's part of the culture.
It's a different
going there.
It's a different market.
Yeah, it's different market. But I think what you're describing with all these experiences is there is a culture to training, and whatever you're doing, whether you're powerlifting, bodybuilding, weightlifting, or just a general strength trainee like we are, but training at one of these places, right? There's a culture to it that goes beyond simply like getting in and doing the workout, doing the program.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle with this. A lot of the people that struggle with online coaching, they struggle with this aspect. How to behave in a gym. And I don't mean like etiquette stuff, like I don't mean like how to not be a jackass at a gym.
You should already know how to do that.
Yeah, all the people that I work with are like nice, like well-adjusted people. So that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like how to walk into a gym with intention, right? And like what is your mindset? Like you roll up in the car, whatever's going on, maybe the day hasn't started yet, maybe you've already had a full day. When you walk in those doors of a real gym, there's a sense of like, you walk in, you're like, this is a place where people get shit done. And there's a vibe. It's hard to describe, but you know it when you go there, just like you were describing at all these places you've been to. And when you're around that energy, it focuses your own training, right? You get in there and you start warming up, and you're not just like going through the motions, right? Every warm-up has intention. You're like, okay, what am I doing today? I've got to squat. What am I squat? Oh man, I got to squat 335 for a set of 5 today. And you've been thinking about it all day. But every warm-up now has a little bit more intention behind it. Like I'm getting ready to crush this set. And you see other people in the gym. You look around because you're like, maybe you're not sure if you can do it today. But you look around, you see other people doing the same thing with their program. You see the focus and the intention, and yeah, there's a camaraderie to it too. Like everybody's sharing in this, hardship this voluntary hardship that you're putting yourself under. But when you see other people taking it seriously and getting focused and psyching themselves up to do the work, it rubs off on you.
100%.
And
100%.
Some people don't really need that. Some people have that drive, that internal fire and motivation to want to do it by themselves, and they can do it just fine. But there's other people who don't, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just a difference in personalities. We have all sorts of different personalities in this world, and everyone fits into our social fabric in their own way. But those people that struggle with taking their workout seriously, and by that I mean like approaching every aspect of what they're doing with focus and intention, and then really giving a hard effort when they're doing their work sets. People that struggle with that tend to do really well in a gym like I'm describing, because other members will show them the way by example. And that's a real intangible of a good gym. It's impossible for me to create that vibe online.
100%. And, what I'll say is this. I sensed that was missing when I was at, LA Fitness in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I remember even before that, I was like, man, I want to do something competitive, and be involved with something, And at one point I was considering CrossFit because that was popular, but man, all the weird...
You didn't want to do handstand push-ups?
I like lifting, I like swimming,
kipping pull-ups?
Yeah, I don't want to... Yeah, I like lifting. And all I saw was, there were guys throwing barbells up that looked pretty big, and I thought that part was cool. But then, all the other stuff, gymnastics, not interested,
Yeah.
So I ended up finding that lifting gym when I did starting strength, and it was in large part because of an old episode from 2012. I encourage you guys to watch it. It was an interview with Rip and Marty Gallagher. I believe it was part 3. It was a 2 or 3 part.
Oh, yes. The whole series is great. Marty is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
He's like the historian of old school barbell training.
Yes.
He's like the bridge between new and old.
We're going to have to get him in here at some point, I guess, if we can. Yeah. I think it was a second part. I can't remember which one. But anyway, they were talking, and I was reading the book, and I was sitting on the boards, and I was getting excited about all this. And then I forgot why I watched that interview, but basically they were saying that, Rip was like, you are talking about, it was part 3 of 3, by the way. So Starting Strength Series, Marty Gallagher, part 3 of 3. It was in 2012. And they're sitting in Rip's gym next to a rack, if you're looking it up. But basically, they were talking about the eating, so me and my friends love that because he was just saying how much that some of these guys used to eat and yada yada yada, But for the purpose of this episode, I want to focus on the part where Rip's like, I was 220, and he's like, or no, he said, you talk about 700 squats, 800 deadlifts, or 800 deadlifts, 700 squats, whatever he said, 500 benches, as though it was the norm, And then he's like, let's see if I can remember my Rip script here. He said something along the lines of, my sorry ass squatted 622, I tripled 600, and deadlifted 633. I had 406 on the bench, or 407 if I had another attempt, but where did I go wrong here? And then Marty responds to him, well, you did fabulous training in a vacuum. And that he's like, by that I mean, and I won't rephrase the whole thing, but this part's critical. He's like, by that I mean, if you're squatting 600 and everyone else around you is squatting 315, that's a whole lot less incentive than you can't go on the big man platform unless you have at least an 8 squat because it doesn't make sense,
Right. Yeah.
And then he's like, so when you're around that, it drags your game up,
It really does. Being the weakest guy at the gym is a great thing because you're going to learn some shit and you're going to absorb some stuff that you're just not going to get at a lot of places.
Yeah. And I think this applies to anything, This applies to anything.
I always want to be I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. I want to be the worst musician in the studio.
Yeah.
You don't want to be drowning, but at the same time, but even then, that's the thing. Like at a gym though, people appreciate hard effort. And I think even more so at a gym like this, like we're talking about, an old school, real gym. People appreciate effort. And that, because I think every one of those guys that got to that level had to, they had to work on some fundamentals at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And really build something, really build like good technique. And really work at a training program, like iterating through that program for long periods of time, right? And so they get it, right? They didn't just, the gym, like you go to your Globo gym or whatever, and you might see a guy squatting 315, or I've even seen a guy squat 405 at a gym. Now it's quite rare.
Yeah, yeah.
It's rare, but you might see that, and some people can do it sort of by accident.
It's a funny thing that you mentioned that you rarely see 500 deadlifts. And me and my buddy Adam were talking about this the other day when I was at the Globo gym, and we're convinced it's because of how shitty the knurling is on those bars.
Oh, that's true. I can't even, if I get over like 335 on a lot of bars at a Globo gym. I can't even my straps slip off.
Yeah,
I can't fucking hold on to it with straps.
Dude, I had a guy bitching about that. I could not believe it.
It's so slick. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, right? So like you might accidentally, you might find some handful of like good athletes out there that, that sort of without trying too hard squat 405. But you're just, even if you take a great athlete, you're not going to see guys squatting 600, 700 that haven't put in some time and really worked at a program. So you go to one of these gyms and they understand that. And even if you're a rank novice, but they see you training and not just fucking around, there's respect there. And then you can learn a lot from watching how they approach their training. You mentioned Marty Gallagher. There's a great video. I'm going to link it in the show notes. And we'll link that other interview with Rip in the show notes as well. But this is a video it's like an instructional video of Kurt Karwoski, who, famously was coached by Marty Gallagher, squatting. He's explaining how to squat, like how to perform a squat. And he talks about his, how he warms up. And what's cool about watching him warm up is the intention he puts behind it. And you don't really know this is where the video is going, but he ends up squatting like 655 for a set of 8 at the end of that. and it's like, Kurt Karwoski, if you're not familiar, was a very, very good power lifter, one of the best squatters of all time.
Look up the 1000 for 2 video if you have not watched that yet, because that is watching that video is a rite of passage if you're a gym person.
If you ever need to get psyched up for something, you got to watch that video. It's like, it never fails. It makes my hair stood up just thinking about it. But yeah, so he famously squatted 1000 for 2 during a meat preparation.
You remember what he
amazing.
said? You remember what he said when they asked him why he went for the double? I think Rip asked him that, right?
I can't remember.
It might have been Rip that said, "Why'd you go for that double? You could have probably went higher at the meet the week after because it fucked him up to do that."
Yeah, it did. Yeah, because he didn't.
Because he was supposed to just do a single and he went for a double. And his response, I think this was his interview with Rip. I could be wrong, but his response was, "Well, it's not Christmas in the gym every day."
Yeah. That's funny. He might have had that sense that he was already peaked and it wasn't going to happen on the meet. He might have known that in the moment. They're like, well, today's a day. It's not meet day, but fuck it. If it's not meet day.
He's a bad motherfucker.
But yeah, so Kurt Karwoski, he is one intense dude. Like this guy gets psyched. Not everybody is that way. There are some more like calm, contained lifters. And, I'm not saying you need to be like Kurt Karwoski, but he's an intense dude. And so it's hard to not let that rub off on you. But anyway, this video is great because you get to see how this guy approaches that set. And you get to see what a real balls out set of 8 looks like.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. If you have only trained by yourself, if you've only trained at a Globo gym, if you've never trained at one of these gyms with other people training hard, you may not have ever seen what a real balls out set looks like. And you may not really have a measuring stick of, what RPE 10 looks like. Right? Going back to our RPE episode, this is one of the problems with it, right? Is like your calibration for what hard effort looks like can change based on social factors. And that's one of the benefits of a gym. So yeah, so I think, we were going to record a short episode today and that's kind of the message, is, when you're looking for training help out there, online coaching can be wonderful because you can hook up with a lot of very good coaches who can help you with programming. And I think in particular, people who have gotten through the novice phase of training or pretty close to it and need help transitioning, it can be a great thing to hook up with somebody to help you navigate the confusing intermediate sort of hell of programming and have somebody to kind of hold you accountable and hold you to a program for a long period of time, right? That you can actually succeed on. So you don't, kind of get too excited and start program hopping every 2 months. But if it's not working for you and you've struggled with the novice linear progression and you have a sense that you are not getting everything out of your training that you think you could, I highly recommend finding a gym like this. It's not easy. Not everybody has one.
You might have to drive. You might have to drive.
You might
far.
have to drive, but it's worth it. And even if it's just for like a period of time, even if it's just for like 6 months, training at a gym like this, that can leave a big impression.
You don't,
and that could set you up for future success.
The big takeaway message I want to hit here is, you don't have to be a competitive power lifter to benefit from this. But, if you're just a guy trying to squat 315 and you're struggling with that, it's great to immerse yourself in that. And it's much like method acting. Method actors will go and immerse themselves in whatever the character's supposed to come out of, right?
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like that, right? Like if you want to get strong, you want to be around a bunch of strong people, just because it just normalizes what you're doing more, It's probably a better way to put it. I remember clear as day, I put 405 on my back. I was terrified of it. I never squatted it before. I was at Barbell Brigade, and then the owner of the gym, Bart Kwan, was tripling it as part of his warm-up right in front of me. And I was facing him. He was in a rig because they had that CrossFit rig, and I was in the power rack, the Elite FTS power rack, and I was facing out of the rack. He was facing out of the rig. He just reps out a triple as his, second to last warm-up. And I'm like, well, fuck, I can't be afraid of this. So then I just went for it. Then there was a guy squatting 7 there. I mean, I have no interest of doing all that, but being around it changes your perception of what you're doing. You kind of normalizes the extreme effort, and some of the things that you think are kind of crazy are suddenly no longer crazy. Like when Rip said 500's on a heavy deadlift, I believed him at face value, but then I really believed him when I saw guys warming up with it,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
In fact, I want to go into one like really bad that's not mine. Like I want to go to a gym with a bunch of strong guys. I've had this desire recently. So
yeah, I think it's great, man. It's that's the thing too. Like you don't have to train forever at a gym like this to get this benefit. And even if you've been training in a home gym and you're not a novice anymore, you've been doing this for a while, it can really reignite some passion and some fire to go train somewhere else and meet some other people and realize you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in the home gym, it's wonderful. There's a lot of great benefits to having a home gym, but sometimes you just kind of feel like drudgery just because you're like, man, there's just, it's just a kind of empty experience sometimes. It's just kind of quiet and, it's good to have some fire. It's good to know that there's other people out there doing this and, sort of keeping it going.
Of course. Yeah. So, if you're training at home, that's great. If there's a gym like this that you can access, within a 1 hour drive, because a 1 hour drive's worth it. I did it. More than that's probably not worth it. But if it's within a 1 hour drive, get in there once a week. Get yourself around that because it will positively impact your training. So I have more to say on this. We can pick it up later in another episode or wrap up in the next one. But we wanted to keep this one short this week. So I hope we inspired you to go around that.
That's right.
So, I highly recommend it. Go look around, see if there's any power gyms. Just, nod your head and be polite when they tell you to look up to go up and, all this other bullshit, Keep lifting the way we're suggesting.
Squat ass to grass. It depends on where you are, what you're going to get.
You're going to get a bunch of advice. Just remember where you came from, people. But enjoy them. Being around a bunch of big, strong guys, even if they're sometimes not the brightest or don't agree with you or have different opinions, it's still fun. I can't say that I've hated anybody that I've met at power meets, power gyms, weightlifting gyms, etc. I've been cool with everybody. Annoyed is probably the worst emotion I've experienced, but you're going to get annoyed with people anywhere. So highly recommend it. And that's our PSA for this episode.
That's right. And if you are in the Phoenix metro area, there's only one place to go.
Of course.
And that's Weights and Plates.
Forget that other place I mentioned earlier. Come by. I'm near the airport, so if you're in town for business and you're staying near the airport, I'm literally like 5 minutes away. I'm by that Hilton Doubletree, actually, that everybody seems to stay at when they're here on business. So if you're in Phoenix and you're staying at that Doubletree Hilton on Broadway, I think that's Broadway and Priest, you're 5 minutes from my gym, people. That Buttes Marriott over there, too. You're 5 minutes from my gym. Come on by, get a session in. We can arrange to get you in if you got to get in early. Otherwise, yeah, let's close this guy out. So
Perfect.
Thank you for tuning into the Weights and Plates podcast. Since the topic is in-person gyms, you can find me at Weights and Plates Gym in Phoenix. We're at 4610 South 35th Street, about 5 minutes from the airport. My website's weightsandplates.com. You can find me on Instagram at _Robert_Santana, and the slow updating gym's Instagram page is weights_and_plates.
All right. Well, if you want to find me in person, you can't. I train out of my home, and right now it is just private, just for friends and family right now. But maybe in the future, I'll have something. You never know. In the meantime, you can find me on Instagram at marmalade_cream, or you can send me an email, jonesbarbellclub@gmail.com. All right, we'll talk to you all again in a couple weeks.